when we do the estate planning and talk about special ed resources, we have found that probably 50% of the people who come to us for estate planning with a disabled child have a very good background of what the kid's educational rights are, rights to adult programs, and 50% really have very little idea. I view this, again, as an opportunity to push the ball forward for these folks. Even if it's just giving them like the websites for the organization's Pennsylvania Health Law Project, the Ed Law Center, that have a lot of valuable information. That can be extremely useful. If you have a stable of therapists, psychologists, psychiatrists, evaluators, private schools, letting them know about wraparound services. It's something that too many of them just have never been given information about, and it's an opportunity to make a difference for them. And for older families, it's, I think, an opportunity also to start them thinking meaningfully about the future. I still am kind of in awe of how many families we serve that are in their late 70s or their 80s who have a disabled child who still lives at home, and they really have no contingency plan. When I say no contingency plan, I mean, the question I always ask them is, if you were to die together, and it's usually a husband and wife, well, sometimes it's just one living, in a common disaster, what would happen to Jimmy, who's 50 and living at home, and is disabled and has been disabled since birth? And many of them, and many very sophisticated people, very capable people of means, say, I don't know. I don't know. There's maybe a daughter living in Maryland and a son over in Ohio. And they say, well, I guess they'd figure it out. And, so what I always tell them is, look, you need now to start talking with your local county mental health, mental retardation administration about placement. Because, it is really hard for these families, and I understand that, to think about Jimmy leaving the home. He's been there for 55 years, or whatever. And, all their lives are intersecting with him. But I said, think about it. If you die, then Jimmy is going to be in a situation where the most traumatic things that happen to people are now going to happen to him all at once. He's going to lose his parents. He's going to lose his best friends. He's going to lose his support mechanism. He's going to be forced to move. Though any of those things are stressful, think of it, for any of us, if we lose our best friend, if we lose someone who's the most supportive, we lose a parent, we lose a spouse, we have to move quickly and involuntarily. Those are huge events. And non-disabled people, at some level, we have the cognitive skills to think through it, to manage it. Now you're talking about a person with a disability, often with mental retardation, who learns more slowly and functions more slowly than the typical person. And think of all that being thrown onto them. So, I mean, it's an opportunity to talk to them, really, because they haven't thought about that. They're thinking about, I'm meeting his needs every day, and they are. But they may not be meeting the long-term needs of that child, who they love with all their heart and soul, but nothing's going on in terms of placement. And recognize, and I always tell them, sometimes they'll say to me, we're on a waiting list for residential services. And they think that waiting lists for residential services through programs, county-funded and state-funded programs, are like lining up for tickets at the movie theater. There's a line, Somebody buys a ticket there, you take a step up. Somebody buys a ticket there, take a step up. Nothing to do with that. The waiting list is not a line. It's not a queue to get further along. I've had people on the waiting list for 20 years. I'm not making that up. I had families with children for residential placement who were in immediate need of it. Single parent, no question about the need for it. But so long as the parent was able to function, they weren't going to get a placement. And I tell families, the waiting list is really as if everybody's name was on that wall. Some are in red, some are in yellow, some are in green. The ones in red, there's a crisis. There's an immediate crisis. Both parents have died, or there's a parent who died and one is in the hospital and the kid's in respite care. You know, the county agency came and picked up the individual, placed them at a facility that will provide 30-day care, and then there's nobody to take care of the kid. The sole caregiver fell and broke her hip. You name it. It's basically, there is a crisis. And that's not, I don't say that by way of criticism of anybody in the county agencies. That's just how the system functions because of funding issues. So the only way that people get placements by and large are through crises. You know, and I say, you know, the crisis is generally either by dying or becoming disabled, and those aren't attractive alternatives for you. But you can start advocating if you get to know people in the system. Let them know that what your health is, and that you can't keep doing it, and that you won't keep doing it. And if you're hospitalized, this individual is going to be in your care. You get them to start really planning, because again, unless your name is in red, that's who they're planning for. And it's not because anybody's negligent or anything, it's just they have so many cases, they have so many things to do, and so they plan for the people in red, and maybe some for the ones in yellow, which is where one caregiver just died and the other has a heart condition. Or that sort of thing, where somebody can take care of this person, but we know probably in the next 6 to 12 months, something's going to give. So we got to at least keep an eye on that, because somebody may have to go out to the house and get Jimmy and take him to respite care while we do crisis planning, because now the name's in red. And everybody else is in green. The people who were on the waiting list for 20 years, they're in green. Somebody's taking care of them, and so long as that happens, everything's okay. So you have to tell the family that. And that's a fairly stark and unhappy thing to tell them, but it's something they really, truly, desperately need to hear. That in order for them to truly provide loving care for that offspring of theirs, they have to plan. Even if it means letting go earlier than they'd hoped, or they envision, to allow this transition to occur at an earlier date.